Good afternoon. My name is Ala McCoy. I am Director of Startup Support at the University of Maryland's Ventures.
I'm Josh Doing. I'm a Startup Success Manager with Ventures.
And we would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you who joined us today for the next installment in Startup Fundamentals Workshop Series, both our live webinar audience, thank you, and those watching a recorded version on our Startup PMD YouTube channel. This workshop series is offered by Ventures in collaboration with MTech at the University of Maryland. To everyone attending the live session, please feel free to submit questions using the Q&A function. You should be able to find it at the bottom of your screen. We are recording this session. It will be posted on Startup PMD YouTube channel. So if you are asking your questions and you would like to remain anonymous, you can use the submit question anonymously function. So today we will be discussing sources of funding available to University of Maryland startups. Some of the funding we will discuss is strictly for University of Maryland College Park startups. However, some funding is available to companies not necessarily affiliated with the University of Maryland College Park. I noticed that we have a few registrant attendees from Bowie State University, welcome, and some who are not current students or faculty at the university. So we'll have some opportunities available for you as well. So before we discuss specific funding opportunities, I'd like to take a minute or a few minutes to discuss different funding types and associated terminology that will be used in this presentation. So some of you are already familiar probably with some of this terminology. However, those of you who are new to the startup scene and just dipping your toe in the entrepreneurship world would benefit from this brief overview. So the very first major distinction in funding type is dilutive versus non-dilutive funding. So non-dilutive means that funding entity does not take equity position in the company. Dilutive means that funding equity takes equity position in a company and thus their ownership stake dilutes existing owners. And we'll talk about different examples. Usually the very first funding in any new company is usually money provided by the co-founders. It's also called self-funding. Obviously, it's non-dilutive because you own a company and it's your money. It is very important to have at least a little bit of money in your company because it shows commitment to future investors, sort of skin in the game. You should be careful, however, not to risk your family's financial security. It's never a good idea to max out your credit cards or take out extra mortgage on your house. So make sure that if you're using your savings, make sure that your spouse or your family is fully on board with that. You have to have full family support and approval for that. It is important though. In many cases, early stage companies are looking for grant funding as their first funding type, especially if you have a lot of R&D still left to be done. And so usually companies look for grants. The reason companies look for grants is because there are grants available for R&D. They are available to early stage companies, and most importantly, they're non-dilutive. So usually it's basically free money. However, you have to be careful when you take out grants because usually grants also still do come with strings. You have to adhere to very specific requirements. There are reporting requirements. And if you receive a grant to develop where you say that you're going to develop specific technology, make sure that that technology or whatever you're doing, whatever you're promising under that grant, the deliverables do not conflict with your commercialization plan. It is, however, one of the best very, very early stage financing mechanisms because it is non-dilutive. And you don't have to pay it back, unlike debt finance. And so for smaller companies, not the ones that are positioned to be high growth startups, but for small companies who do not want to be pursuing a quick exit, or for those who do not want to give up a major portion of that company, debt financing may be an option, a better option to pursue. So debt financing is non-dilutive. Banks do not take equity stake in your company. However, that money must be repaid, and it's sometimes difficult, not sometimes, usually it is very difficult to obtain loans, especially by early stage companies. Typically, banks will ask you to write personal guarantees, and you would need to put up collateral, your personal property as collateral. So be very careful. However, it is an opportunity. Even though you have to put up a personal guarantee, SBA facilitates loans for small businesses where they waive requirement for personal guarantee for a portion of the loan. So you can visit sba.gov for more information. High growth startups, those are the ones that are positioned to be sold in 5 to 10 years. Those are the ones that go for equity investors, such as angel investors and venture capitalists. So venture capitalists and angel investors usually invest in companies that are going to be growing really fast, very quickly, and will be sold in the next 5 to 10 years because that's how they make money. Typically, the first equity investor in your company would be friends and family. So your friends and family would put money in. Again, be very careful who you take money from. Don't take your uncle's retirement because it is a risky business. Or if you do take your friends and family money, make sure that people understand that there's a good chance that that money will be lost and will not be returned to them. It is usually one of the first round of equity financing after the personal investment. Next usually come angel investors. Angel investors invest their own personal money, and therefore they usually invest earlier than venture capitalists, and they invest less amount of money. They typically invest in companies in an industry they understand, where they are also able to help. A good angel investor doesn't come with just cash. He or she also comes with advice, mentorship. Oops, sorry. Not sure what's happening here with slides. They come with ability to open doors, to introduce you to customers, to introduce you to potential other investors, and so on and so forth. Next usually come venture capitalists. So big difference between angels and VCs. VCs invest someone else's money. Therefore, they are more risk averse, and therefore they invest in a later stage company when there's a bit more de-risking has been done. And they also invest a larger amount of money. They typically take a board seat and take more active role in the company as well. So like I said before, experienced investors bring expertise, network. If you receive money from a well-regarded venture fund or well-regarded venture investor, it also gives you a stamp of approval. And again, this funding type is for companies that are positioned for very quick growth, and also will be sold in 5 to 10 years, because when angels or VCs invest money in a company, they expect that investment to be returned to them within the next 5 to 10 years or so. So now that you are familiar with major different funding types for startup financing, let's discuss specific funding opportunities available to startups at the University of Maryland and the state of Maryland, because obviously that's what you are here for. So we're not located in the Silicon Valley where VC funding is aplenty. However, the state of Maryland and University of Maryland startups have access to over $1 million in funding, and that's not even counting SBIRs and STTRs. And we'll go over these opportunities individually. So together with partners across campus, we created Startup Guide, a tool that can help navigate the ecosystem and resources in order that makes sense. This tool exists in online form at startupguide.umd.edu and in a print form as a basic flowchart. The suggested path is divided into 4 parts following the stages of company development. You can visit the website, review the details, and I will cover funding opportunities that correspond to each of these stages. So very first, before the company is even formed, there are funding opportunities available to teams before the company is even formed. So if you are developing a medical device, the University of Maryland is offering medical device development fund opportunity, where you can obtain $25,000 to $50,000 of non-dilutive funding to advance your technology up a TRL level. It's managed by the Fischel Department of Bioengineering, and it is available to University of Maryland researchers. So you have to be a University of Maryland researcher to obtain that funding. Next, and very highly recommended, is for every team to participate in regional and then in national NSF I-Corps. This program offers $50,000 to conduct customer discovery. This is also at a very early stage and before the startup is even formed. It's non-dilutive. It comes to you as grant funding at the university. If you participate in this program and complete it successfully, it gives you a big stamp of approval, increases probability of obtaining TEDCO MII funding, SBIR funding, and investors also respect and like companies that go through NSF I-Corps. To qualify for the national I-Corps, you have to have NSF lineage either through NSF funding or through University of Maryland I-Corps or regional I-Corps. And the technology also has to be owned by the university. In the past, they accepted teams where the technology was not owned by university, but that has changed. It's a 7-week program. It's a lot of work. You have to commit to it, but it's absolutely worth it. You can find more information at icorps.umd.edu. And the team also does info sessions on the first Wednesday of every month. If you are a graduate student or undergraduate student, you should also look to student competitions to supplement your funding. There are multiple competitions offered at the University of Maryland. Pitch Dingman competition is offered by Dingman Lamone Center for Entrepreneurship at the Smith School of Business. You should reach out to them and find out how to apply. Typically, it is held in the spring. However, the application process starts late in the fall. There's also Do Good Challenge organized by School of Public Policy, and they also have opportunities for you to win some money and also get some exposure for your company and your idea. If you are a University of Maryland researcher or a researcher at University of Maryland, Baltimore, Morgan State University, Johns Hopkins University, and UMBC, you're eligible for TEDCO Maryland Innovation Initiative funding. The very first stage of this funding, is called Technology Validation Grant. It's a grant. It also is available before the company is formed. It comes to you as grant funding, research funding to your lab, non-dilutive, obviously. You don't have to repay it. And also importantly, there's also no overhead. So the entire $130,000 budget is awarded to you as a PI to do the project. It's a 9-month project where you would be working to validate your technology and create commercialization plan. A major distinction here is, unlike most of the other R&D grants that you applied for, you were proposing a technology development project where you were looking at an interesting technological or scientific question. In this case, you would be proposing to do an R&D project, developing technology with commercialization as the goal. You can use this money to pay salaries, your student salaries, buy equipment, materials. You can also hire outside consultants. This is a very unique funding. It's available. It comes in at very, very early stage before the company is even formed. And so this is an opportunity. You're a graduate student, PhD student, and you've created something with your PI, with your advisor that you are curious to see if you could potentially commercialize it. This could be your first step of doing it before you even leave the university. So you can use this money to finance your postdoc salary, to stay at the university for another year, to further develop the technology and a plan to commercialize it. Some of that money can also be used to pay for actually form the company. And I saw there was a question about the ownership for NSF I-Corps. So it has to be a technology that was developed at the university with research funding that you would take through that program. And I saw that Josh also provided additional details. TEDCO MII funding is in the same way. It is available to technologies that were developed at the university that are owned by the university. Typically, any technology developed with sponsored research funding is owned by the university and would be eligible for this funding. Talked about competitions. So once you are done with your 9-month technology validation project, you typically would form your company. The company then would license technology into the company, and then the company could apply for the next phase of MII funding, called company formation. That is not, this $300,000 is not a grant. It goes to the company either as a convertible debt note or a reimbursable grant. If it is a convertible debt note, it would be dilutive and it would convert into equity at the next round of financing. If it is a reimbursable grant, it's basically a success-based, think of it as a success-based loan. And this is something that you would negotiate with MII at the time of investment or fund disbursement. This is very early stage startup financing that's typically really difficult to obtain, hard to find, especially in this area. And typically many of the companies launching from the universities or from University of Maryland College Park and the other 4 universities that participate in the MII program. Typically, this is their first real investment. Bowie State University is also, there's a pilot that MII is offering. So Bowie State University is eligible for MII funding as well. The terms are slightly different though. So that, again, to qualify, the company must be formed and technology licensed from the university. And the company has about a year to apply. If you wait longer than a year, then the company is not going to be eligible. So for the application process, TEDCO relies on people called SiteMiners to assist you in application development and to approve your application for submittal. So if you, these are our SiteMiners. We have 5 people working on guiding the application process and approving the applications. They also are responsible for defending MII applications for the technology validation phase, for phase 1. If you're interested in submitting your application, please let me know. I will work with you in determining whether or not you're eligible, and then if so, I will connect you with an appropriate SiteMiner. This is program metrics for the last 5 years. The program has been in existence for 13 years. These are our last 5 years. As you can see, our success rate up until FY24 was very high. It dropped in FY25 because other funding sources started drying up, and many researchers at all universities turned to MII as funding that was still available, and the number of applications surged. Since they're going for the same amount of money, obviously the success rate dropped. However, it is still fairly high. So before we go further, the application process for Maryland Innovation Initiative, so the applications are accepted quarterly. The next application deadline is October 15th. However, it is too late to start the application process for October 15th, as you have, per TEDCO rules, you have to work with a SiteMiner for at least a month. And we ask you that you engage with SiteMiners actually even a month and a half in advance to ensure a quality application being prepared. So if you are considering this program, please let me know, and we will discuss whether or not you should be applying for the January 15th application deadline. Typically, once MII has been received, it's typically a fairly quick process. The next funding opportunities that companies turn to is SBIR, or Small Business Innovation Research. So these funds are available in 3 phases. Phase 1 is dependent on the agency, $150,000 to $250,000, typically concept development, technology R&D, for about 6 months to a year, again, dependent on the agency. And phase 2, prototype development, takes over, usually goes for about 24 months, and comes with $1 million plus, depending on the agency and what problem you're trying to solve. These are the governmental agencies that participate in the SBIR program. They each have their own application process. It is, so you can visit sbir.gov to search for the opportunities. And if you are interested in applying for a specific opportunity, you should reach out. It is very recommended that you first should reach out to program manager within that agency to discuss what is the best way to proceed. Within the University System of Maryland, so if you are student, faculty, staff, or alum of University System of Maryland, one of the institutions, you can also qualify for Maryland Launch Fund. Maryland Launch Fund grants investments and grants. So grants, usually micro grants between 1 to 5,000, and investments could be up to 50K. It has to be University System of Maryland affiliated companies. You don't have to be a for-profit company. It could be a nonprofit as well. You could apply for a grant. If you are interested, you should register at this URL that I'm showing, and you will receive notification when the next round is open. They typically do these investment rounds twice per year. For more information, you can contact launch at usmd.edu. MIPS is the next opportunity. MIPS stands for Maryland Industrial Partnerships. It's managed by Maryland Technology Enterprise Institute, or MTEC. It is a fantastic R&D financing mechanism where a startup company would invest $10,000 into a project. University would match $90,000, and $100K would go to a lab within any institution within University System of Maryland. So it doesn't have to be just the University of Maryland lab that could do the work for you. It could be University of Maryland, Baltimore, or UMBC, for example. So if your company has a technology and you would like it to benefit from further development or testing by a lab at any of the University System of Maryland institutions, this would be a great opportunity. It's grant, so it's non-dilutive funding. You could apply it as a 1 or 2 year project. So you could potentially receive $180,000 in value. And typically, so this money is also the entire amount goes to a lab, to the project, so there's no overhead. If you're interested, please contact Ronnie Gist. He's been with MIPS for many years and will be very helpful. Their application process is also quarterly. The company has to be located in the state of Maryland. You don't have to have any relationship to any of the universities. You don't have to be alum or student or faculty or staff, and you don't need to have licensed university technology. So any company located in the state of Maryland can benefit. I highly recommend that you look into that. If you're developing a clean tech or any type of clean technology, you should reach out to Chesapeake Bay Seed Capital Fund. They originally were created to invest in companies that are cleaning up the Chesapeake Bay. However, they've since expanded to invest potentially in any company that is in the climate tech or clean tech area. They make between $100,000 and $500,000 in seed and Series A round investments. It is dilutive, so the fund takes equity in your company. They usually co-invest with other funds. They do not lead investment rounds. So to qualify, you have to have a prototype, demonstrate product market fit. You have to have a thoughtful commercialization plan. And you have to fit within their investment criteria to either clean up the Chesapeake Bay or be in a climate tech or clean tech industry. If you're interested, please reach out to Scott Christensen for more information. And again, this is an opportunity for all companies. You don't have to be affiliated with the University of Maryland or System of Maryland to participate. For companies located in Prince George's County, you have to be located in Prince George's County. You don't have to be associated with the university necessarily. There is an opportunity to receive dilutive investment from Discovery Fund. And it's early stage equity investment. And they typically invest in high growth technology startups located in Prince George's County. For more information, you can visit the Discovery Fund website and reach out to them to see if you could be considered. Maryland Momentum Fund is a investment fund at the University System of Maryland. They make dilutive or equity investments up to $500,000 into companies that have been founded and are owned by any University System of Maryland institution, student, alum, faculty, or any company that licensed intellectual property from any of the USM institutions. They also do not lead investments. You must have a matching investment from another fund. So they will consider co-investing only if somebody else has already made a decision to invest in your startup company. Mike Ravenscroft is managing the fund. You can reach out to him for more information and also visit their website. And this is where I should have corrected this slide because Dingman Center was recently renamed into Dingman Lamone Center for Entrepreneurship. And my guess is that the angel group that they're running is now called Dingman Lamone Center Angels as well. This is a angel investor group that operates here at the University of Maryland campus at the business school. It is a group of angel investors that invest their own money and they make their own decisions whether or not they want to invest in any particular company. They make dilutive investments in early stage startup companies. You don't have to be, this company doesn't have to be affiliated with the University of Maryland. However, angel investors usually like investing in companies to which they could drive. So you have to be located somewhere in the DMV area. So you could be visited by an angel investor if they make a decision to apply to invest in your company. If you are interested, please reach out to Stan Smith, who manages this group. So there's a question. The question is, can a faculty member join the Dingman Center Angels as an angel investor? You can, if you qualify the angel investor requirement required by the federal government. So the federal government requires that you should have at least $1 million in liquid investments to be considered an official angel investor. So you can reach out to Stan Smith and ask him if you could join. There could be potential conflict of interest issues there, but I'm pretty sure that they could be resolved. You should also reach out to the COI committee to make sure that you're not in violation. But as a faculty member, you wouldn't be allowed to invest in any company that is owned by the university. However, you could invest in other companies. So the answer is yes, but we can connect later and I can answer those questions. But yes, you can. So TEDCO has additional funding for later stage companies. So first of all, they have, in addition to Maryland Innovation Initiative, they also have Rural Business Innovation Initiative available to companies located in rural areas. They also have seed funds and social impact funds. So you can find out more information at the website. Well, first of all, before I move on to some of the success stories, does anybody have any additional questions? I know this was a lot of information. We will share the slides and you can also review the startup guide. But in the meantime, does anybody have any questions? Anybody interested in potentially pursuing I-Corps or MII? And I know some of you already are pursuing MII applications. All right, and now let's talk about some of the success stories. So this is a company called Hazel Analytics. It was started by Ben Peterson, who was then professor at the computer science department, and Jinja Jin, who is still a professor of economics here at the University of Maryland. And they created a company that was collecting health report data, food safety data from across the nation, and they were normalizing it. So if a health inspector comes and inspects a restaurant, a McDonald's in Prince George's County, they have their own rules and metrics how they inspect than, for example, in Montgomery County, Maryland. So if you are a large brand, you have lots of locations across the country, it's really difficult. It was at that point difficult to compare health inspection data. So they decided, they received a grant to create software that would collect that data and normalize it and allow business owners to compare that data. They developed that as researchers at the University of Maryland. However, it wasn't quite useful to restaurants because it was just software that didn't have any it wasn't easy to use and there was no analytics. So they created a company called Hazel Analytics, and they built a user interface. They built analytics on top of that, and very quickly acquired a lot of customers, big customers. They only used MII funding to build that company, so they didn't need any additional funding to fully build out a company and start selling that product. The company was acquired in 2023. It's one of the success stories. And again, they only relied on MII funding to fully launch that company. Here's another success story, and also company built fully on MII funding as well. So Blueline, Professor Ken Kao is a professor of cell biology and molecular genetics, and she is researching progeria, which is a premature aging disease. During her research, she discovered that methylene blue has very strong anti-aging effect, antioxidant effect on cells, and decided to launch a anti-aging skincare line. It is very popular. Customers love it, and they just had to move to a bigger warehouse to accommodate growing demand. And also last week, they launched a new product with an ad at Times Square. I unfortunately don't have a photo. I should have added a slide, but don't have it here. But you can see it on LinkedIn. So again, this is a company that was built solely on MII funding. Dr. Srini Raghavan, a professor in chemical biomolecular engineering, is a co-founder of many startups, and he has a very simple recipe to be a co-founder of multiple successful startups. He usually develops a great innovation with his PhD student, and then the PhD student takes the lead in building a company. Typically, the PhD student goes through I-Corps, and then relies on MII funding to do initial launch of the company, and then pursue additional funding. But he actually is a co-founder of more than 3 startups. I should add more logos to this slide. Professor Bing Hu has unfortunately left the University of Maryland. He is now at Yale. He was a professor here at the Center for Materials Innovation, very well known and very well respected, and he has very similar methodology as Srini Raghavan. So he also co-invents some sort of fantastic innovation with PhD students, and then the PhD student or postdoc takes the lead in launching the company. Inventwood has just opened a big manufacturing facility in the state of Maryland in Frederick County, where they are selling innovative wood products. And he has many other companies in the pipeline as well. But Inventwood is probably the most advanced. And again, he also relies on MII funding for initial development, and then uses SBIR and venture funding going forward, and MIPS. Here's another great success story. N5 Sensors was started by assistant research scientist Dr. Abhishek Motayed. He actually took a different path, different from what Dr. Raghavan and Dr. Hu are doing. So he actually stepped down from his university position and decided to become a CEO of the company. It is unusual, and typically we want you researchers to stay at the university and continue doing research. However, this is also possible. So N5 Sensors is also located at in the state of Maryland. They have employees, they're making sales, and they also relied on MII funding as their initial funding mechanism. They also received quite a bit of SBIR funding to further fund the technology R&D and MIPS. So I hope we have many more successful companies that were built using these funding opportunities, and I hope that you will take advantage of some of them as well. Does anybody have any additional questions for us? So my contact information is here. Please feel free to reach out to me by email. If you'd like to schedule time to meet, I know this was a lot of information that we covered very quickly. Please let me know if you would like to receive a copy of the slides, and I'll be happy to share. Or you can also visit the Startup Guide website and follow the guide to learn about different opportunities. If I can also stop sharing, and I can also stop recording if you would like to ask questions without being recorded. So again, thank you so much to everybody who came, and thank you so much to everybody who is watching us on our YouTube channel. Please reach out with any questions.